Welcome back to At Work in Pain, or At Pain in
Yes,
Work. No,
at
yes,
work in
At Work in
pain,
Pain.
or the work that is paying.
The
No.
work that is correct. I'm Julia Ferrioli,
I
and
am Chris Short.
this is our second episode. We kind of took a little bit of a break, both for um, distance, and I know I wasn't feeling well.
Neither was I. Several weeks. I've had a few procedures the past couple months, so I'm feeling a little bit better
Yeah.
than normal these days. So yeah, that's a good thing, I guess, right? I mean, now that
Yeah.
I've recovered from it all,
Same. I actually got Botox.
which is interesting, in and of itself. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, growing up, I was thinking, oh, I'd never be somebody who got Botox. And then all of the medical uses
There's a lot
really
of them. Yeah.
came out. Yeah. So I got Botox in my scalene muscles.
Oh,
Um,
nice. Did that help?
and oh my gosh, like I can't even describe the day after I was sitting at my desk and I was like, huh, my ribs don't hurt as
Wow.
much as they were. And I don't know how, but apparently I was getting a shit ton of referred pain from my scalenes. So
Wow. That's crazy.
yeah, weird.
But I'm glad that Botox works because, I've often been asked what I considered it, and I was like, maybe I don't know. So now I will say yes.
I was super
Um,
skeptical, not
yeah,
gonna lie.
I mean, yeah, it's botulism in a lighter form. Yeah, that's kind of scary in and of itself.
Yep.
But yeah,
Hmm.
um, that's good to hear that it worked for you. That's very, very good.
Yeah, I think in small doses for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
But anyway,
So
we're
you want to,
back.
yeah, we're back.
Okay.
I had another, what's it called? Shoot, I forget the name. Cervical epidural.
Mm.
This time I had to pay for sedation because apparently that's not medically required for this procedure. Um, yeah, you have a needle shoved up your spinal cord and see how well that feels, right? Like, come on, insurance company, give me a break.
Did they at least give you like lidocaine or something?
Yeah, they put
Okay.
lidocaine in at first to just make it so it doesn't hurt as much when they pull the needle out, basically, right?
Hmm.
Um, but I still paid for the sedation because I'm not going to go through that unsedated. I might do it if we do it again just to
Hmm.
see the difference. But I can't imagine it's going to feel good.
No.
No. Anyways, what do you want to talk about today?
So I know it's cliche,
Hmm.
but 2020 has been a hell of a year.
That's putting it mildly. Yes.
Yeah, just a smidge. Um, but I was wondering if we could explore like what it's meant from a pain front, from a work balance, and how it's kind of affected us um, on a like chronic illness, chronic pain level.
Right. I mean, I don't know about for you, but for me, like it added molasses to everything, right? Like think of, I'm from the South, right? So like molasses is this very thick, syrupy substance, right? And like it's what makes brown sugar brown, if you're not familiar with it, right? Like the more molasses, the browner the sugar kind of deal. And literally everything became harder in March, right? So going to the doctor became more difficult, but it also became easier because a lot of my monthly appointments or mental health appointments became virtual.
Mm-hmm.
And my psychiatrist, for example, said he'll probably never go back to a regular office, right? Like it just doesn't make sense for what he does. He wastes so much time, when he could actually be seeing patients. So it increases his capacity. Whereas on the other hand, just kind of the stressors of not having that social interaction and trying to feel those things out where often, like getting a good laugh in was difficult, right? Like, doing the things that made life fun and good, you had to do digitally, right?
Hmm.
So I'm lucky in the sense that my job turned into live streaming all the time because I did get to get some social interaction throughout the year. Um, but other people probably not so much. I'm curious how it's impacted you.
In some ways, it's made things quite a bit easier. I
Hmm.
moved from DC back to Seattle this year.
Which is crazy to do in a COVID year, I would
Uh,
imagine.
I may have temporarily taken leave of my senses. Um, but I was going, like, all of my providers, all of my medical providers were in Baltimore. And since my vision is impaired, I can't drive myself.
Oh,
So
yeah.
my partner would have to take time off from work and drive me up to Baltimore.
Mm,
Um, and honestly, that contributed a lot to feeling like a burden.
right.
Um,
I can imagine. Yeah.
yeah. But with everyone moving to telehealth,
Mm,
I
kind of a
gained like days of my life back from,
right. Yeah.
yeah. So I could schedule a doctor's appointment after a meeting
Hmm.
without taking like 4 hours off to get to and from Baltimore.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, in the DC area, especially, I can't even imagine. Yeah,
traffic.
here in Detroit, it's one thing, right? Like I might drive an hour to Ann Arbor, but that's
Mhm.
like, dozens of miles, you know?
Yeah, but it's given me a lot more capacity at work, and I'm able to get a lot more done just because I'm not commuting to and from doctor's appointments
Mm,
as much. I still have some in-person ones that I need to go to, but um, yeah, just getting that time back, and
would you,
reducing the frustration of
right,
waiting, because now I can like do work if the
right.
doctor isn't on time.
I had an interesting incident though. Like the one time I did have to go out, right? I had to get an MRI on my neck, and I couldn't believe I was dumbfounded, right? The order for the MRI it literally could have been handwritten. It didn't like there was nothing germane other than please examine this area of the body, right? There was no doctor's signature. There wasn't even his name, right? It was just like the codes, the thing to do, and where I was going. And like I had to print that out and bring it with me. Never in my mind do I think of printing anything
Right.
anymore. This is 2020, right? Like I'm not here to waste paper. Um, but yes, I have a printer. I just didn't realize I needed to print out the order for the thing that they had a copy of.
Hmm.
Um, so I actually had to get into not an argument, but somewhat of a, ma'am, there's nothing germane on this thing. I could literally handwrite this and hand it to you. Give me a sheet of paper and a pen, right? And she finally relented, and I realized that there's two kinds of like ways medical staff handle things. It's either patient centric or it's process centric, right?
Hmm.
And this health system was process centric because they wanted me to jump through a bunch of hoops to get access to medicine. Whereas it's regulatory. I understand why, but it's not how it should work, right?
Yeah.
I think you and I've discussed this a little bit, and it's very much right. Like you should be patient driven in the medical field. You should care about the patient's health, not necessarily, oh, did we get the paperwork right? you know, you
Yeah.
can you can forgo that.
The amount of overhead that is
Mm,
purely due to insurance reasons is absurd, in my book.
yeah, and the fact that I think also insurance companies knowing that they're going to kind of take a bath in the whole COVID situation.
Mhm.
They have pushed back a lot this year on covering things, right? Like every time I had to have an increase in a medication or a change in a medication, like a letter came eventually thereafter from CVS saying your insurance company has authorized this medication for a year, blah 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 blah. At this dosage, if there's a change, we'll need to get more authorization. And it's like, wow,
Mhm.
I did not think that would happen. Like for every single medication I took. So yeah, like you go, there's 10 things that I have to take throughout the day.
Mhm.
That's a lot of like authorizations, and I feel like that's kind of counterintuitive, right? You're increasing your workload in a time where you're trying to save money.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like obviously there's a payoff there at some point, right? Like there's a point of diminishing return though too.
Well, I think the sad part to me is that it probably does save them money
Mm,
because there are a non-trivial number of people who don't appeal when things are denied,
good point. Yeah.
because they may not know the process to do so, or they may just not have time. Like you and I
Yeah.
are pretty damn lucky
Oh
because
yeah.
um, we have the privilege to be a little bit flexible with work.
Mhm.
Whereas, if you're working a 9 to 5 um, hourly
Mm.
job, like you don't necessarily have that same flexibility.
Yeah. We are very fortunate,
Mhm.
right? Like, yes, we are unfortunate in the sense that we're both, disabled in some degree or form or fashion, but we are very fortunate in the sense that we work in tech. We
Mhm.
work in not just work in tech, but we work at large tech companies that are very, very good to their employees
Yeah.
and give us a degree of, latitude when it comes to just make sure you get the work done, not necessarily punch the clock, right?
Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
but with that, I've noticed that I've had to explain things more,
Mhm.
right? Like about my condition, and do so in a way that like it's not too descriptive to freak people out, but not too vague to like where the hell is he, right? So it's like, hey, by the way, all I'm doing this. I'm actually going to take PTO this time, and yeah, I need somebody to help cover me for this thing or whatever. Um,
Mhm.
that is something that I've done more, which I think is healthier for me in the long term, right? Like giving myself time to recover from a procedure is very important. And I used to push through it in the past. I can't
Mhm.
anymore. I don't know why. I just can't push through like the post procedure recovery period.
Something about, uh, aging at the rate of 1 second per second, sort of thing.
Right. Yeah. Um, no, I do feel like I turned 40 this year, right?
Mhm.
And I do feel like the things I did in my 20s caught up to me this year, right? Like in a big way,
Yeah.
psychologically and physically. But at the same time, 2/3 or maybe even 3/4 of the doctor's visits I had to do were virtual,
Mhm.
which is an amazing thing. So
I
um,
I'd
that
love to. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
that democratization for access to medicine, I feel like has helped people that have smartphones, but has not helped people that don't.
Mhm.
Right. And I know this is 2020 and, we're recording this and it's going to be on YouTube and all this other stuff, but there's still people out there that need access to technology.
Yeah.
And those people might be getting left behind. And that's something I fear in general, right? Being a technologist. But
Mhm.
um, what were you going to say?
Well, I was actually going to pivot a little bit
Mm-hmm.
about technology and how it's leveled the playing field at work for
Mm,
for us, uh,
yeah.
because I you've been remote for how long now?
I mean, there was like a 6 month stint where I had an office job, but I think I've been remote for 4 years nonstop now. Right. I think most of that office job I was actually remote anyway, just due to weather and office construction and stuff like that. So I do live in Michigan, so it snows here sometimes. And yeah, making the 30-minute drive into downtown Detroit in the snow is not pleasant sometimes.
No.
So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I used to work on a fully distributed team and switched to one that wasn't like all together, but had a significant presence in some hubs.
Mm-hmm.
And I had been struggling being like the only remote person. And with COVID, as everybody became remote,
Right.
it's it's actually been surprising how much smoother work has been, because
Really?
we have to build up a lot of these good communication habits,
Mm.
and everybody's taking their meetings from a separate room, right? So it
Right.
encourages good etiquette.
Yeah. Which brings up an interesting point, right? Like, my office was below me in the basement,
Mhm.
and we're finishing it over the course of 2021 finally. And I moved up here into this guest bedroom, which is
Mhm.
next to my son Max's room, and it kind of like it did two things. A, it made me appreciate the extra voltage and power that I had down there, the extra amperage, and then
Mhm.
B, I also had like it's a basement, it's an unfinished basement. I could run cable anywhere, so I
Mhm.
had a direct Ethernet drop down from the demarc point from Comcast, right, like right
Yeah.
into a core switch for the house essentially that everything ran to. Well, the second you pull my office apart and spread it out across 3 layers of the house, because of power requirements, and I was like popping the breaker in here essentially. Um, that made things very interesting, right? Like for me personally, because like I don't do work on one computer throughout the day. You see this computer behind me, that does a lot of work for me throughout the day too, and I manage it remotely. And then there's another computer elsewhere in the house, that's a Windows computer that I need to do some stuff on because of the live streaming work that I do. And it like I touch 3 OSs a day. That's fine. I can do that just fine. But it was no longer right. Turn around and touch everything, right? Like I had to figure out how to distribute things so that I wouldn't pop a 15 amp breaker.
Yeah.
Um, and that I think like I have been in a suburban area with a larger home and extra rooms and things like that. I was at an extreme advantage there.
Mhm.
Um, and actually, last night, my hand actually hurts from making cables last night because I was tired of dropping live streams. And I was like,
Right.
I'm going to figure out a way to get a hard line into this office come hell or high water. And I did. Um, and it was good that I could do it.
Mhm.
But it was also painful in the process of like making cables where that was never a problem in the past for me.
Yeah.
And now it is. It's like, ooh, wow. I never thought grabbing a crimper and smashing it down would be so cumbersome, right? Like I used to do
Yeah.
that multiple times a day.
Mhm.
Now it's hard to do. So it tells me that I need to move more towards software and not hardware kind of thing, right? Like
Mhm.
but maybe even more soft skills as opposed to hard skills too, right? Like um,
Yeah.
it makes me wonder how many people have had to learn things that they never had to learn before because they are doing things not
Mhm.
face to face. There are no facial expressions unless your camera's on, kind of thing, right? There's no
Yeah.
body language, nothing.
I like to call those skills core skills,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah.
because
Foundational skills is what I
they're,
typically call them. Yeah.
yes,
Mm-hmm.
foundational skills. Because yes, you can get by maybe without them,
Mm-hmm.
but you're not going to get that far.
Mm-mm.
So, um, but to your earlier point, which I think dovetails nicely with this, the the social part and the isolation part of this year has been pretty severe.
Yeah.
I know that, I moved back to Seattle, and have really yet to see anyone here,
Yeah.
in a meaningful way. And, that's been super hard. And it's led me to rely more on my work interactions for some social fulfillment, um, which has its ups and downs, right? Like we see each other more as people. We share more of our lives. And we've been really above board when we're struggling. But it's also like, okay, well, how much do I actually tell? Right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm totally fine popping into chat and saying, hey, I'm gonna go get stabbed with needles for a while. But
talk to you tomorrow.
yeah. And people are like, oh, okay, sure.
Yeah, that sounds horrible. Go for it.
Have fun. But it's a fine line.
Yeah, like I think the phrases that have been used for me in the past are "good luck storming the castle," right? Like that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The amount you have to open up right now is interesting in the sense that like I had to be fully transparent with like my time out of the office because I was actually needing somebody else to cover me for like recording and producing live streams.
Right.
So like that's a non-trivial effort, right? Like I have to train people how to do it and that kind of thing. And it's I'm glad that there is like a cadre of people behind me that can do that, because if I like imagine not being able to take PTO, like that'd be terrible, right? Like imagine not being able to get treatment because I've got to postpone a few days because I'm actually got this live stream going is super important, right? Like
right.
In the past I would have considered doing that, but no more, right? Like my health is far more important than anything work related. And there is a direct correlation between like how I feel and how well I work, right? Like if I am in excruciating pain or I'm drugged up, for example, you're going to get two different experiences there,
oh yeah,
right? Like, and they're going to be wildly different, right? But I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday this week, like I didn't time the medicines perfectly, and there was like 30 minutes of just absolute like where it was like I'm hoping this wears off soon, but yeah, it's gonna be a fun stream. Here we go. So there's balance in everything, and it's been difficult to manage pain and a public facing persona at the same time without like experiencing like the extremes of the spectrum, right? Like I've been on both sides where like you see me sitting in the chair sideways kind of thing because my shoulder hurts so bad, or you see me just kind of here like because I am just zoned out on what the person's talking about. It's really weird, but most of the time I'm very much like this, where it's just I don't know what you call not lucid, but
present.
Present. Yeah, there you go. And it's one thing, like my team understands that like he's got to take these appointments. He's got to take care of himself. If he doesn't, he kind of like his work deteriorates, right? Like my team gets that. Like if I were to all of a sudden join a new team and have to explain that again, like that would be easier now, thanks to COVID, I feel like. But it's still not trivial, if that makes sense, right? Like it's not normal to hurt. It's not normal to be in need of constant treatment kind of thing, right?
Except I really do think that it's more normal than people think, right? And that's the difficult part about chronic pain is that people associate it with weakness. And something to be avoided at all cost. Don't get me wrong, I'd love to avoid it myself.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
Like it's a part of a lot of people's lives, and We don't need to be silent about it. So,
Yeah, to be ashamed of your pain, like, I was hurt in '03, and I spent the next 7 years in the military still, right? So, that's
mhm.
that's a whole different lifestyle than
Yeah.
I could ever imagine being in, like now, right? Like it's hard for me to think back to then and be like, I did that, you
Mhm.
know? And it's like, how did I do that?
Yeah.
And it was a lot of people just being like, oh, like doctors' orders were military orders, right? Like
Mhm.
you had to follow them. So there was no questioning it, right? Especially when it's like, oh, look, he can't move his arm. It's like, okay, yeah, you need to get that fixed. We need you
Yeah.
to have that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but now it's more subtle, right? Because I have this great chair and this perfect desk that can go up and
Mhm.
down. I can stand or sit how I see fit, or have this nice recliner behind me where I can work from.
Mhm.
And I don't get the I don't run anymore because that would just destroy my neck kind of thing and compress my spine in ways that would probably not feel comfortable. But I do walk, right? And it's even then, like some of those walks I'll get back from. And I do 2 laps around the neighborhood. It's about a mile. And the dog loves it, but sometimes I don't. And
Yeah.
I've walked in from walks before and been like, I'm done for the day.
Mhm.
And like that has been challenging sometimes, right? Like because people still need you, you know, and it's hard to explain to people. Listen, this really can wait until tomorrow. Let me just recover, and I'll get everything you need first thing in the morning, right?
Mhm. Yeah. There are times where I just peace out of
Yeah.
work, because
Mm.
like either I can't focus, or I feel too sick, and that's just not going to be conducive with me doing quality work, right? Um, and so, I'll flex time from other days to make up for it. And
Yeah,
yeah,
I don't have the problem of work quote working enough time, right? Like I
yeah,
have the problem of working too much,
right.
which I think is another part of the COVID story that we probably should touch on a little bit,
Oh,
right? Is
sure.
like how are you managing yourself from, or better question, are you taking time off over the next couple of weeks? What the hell are you going to do? Right? Like you don't have work to work on, or are you going to work on work, right? Like,
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, I am taking the next couple weeks off, which is
Hmm.
probably the first time that I've taken that much time since since joining the company I work for 9 years ago.
Wow.
Um, I'm terrible at taking vacation in general.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I'm looking at the next 2 weeks and thinking, um, what what do I do?
Now.
And some of that is because um, my my body is not up for doing the things I normally do to have fun. And so a lot of like my normal hobbies have been not taken away, but made inaccessible,
Makes
if that
sense.
makes sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I've noticed, like, I bought a Switch. A lot of people were talking about Animal Crossing, so I was like, I'll
Mhm.
check out this game. And I noticed something immediately.
Hmm.
Every game I played up until that moment had a part of violence in it, right? Be it Civilization 6, be it NFL, Madden, football, right? There was always a degree of violence. Assassin's Creed, whatever, right? Like
Mhm.
Animal Crossing changed kind of, like it put me at ease. Like,
Mhm.
and playing it keeps me somewhat calm, right? There's every day there's only so much you can do in the initial beginnings of it, but like it had a calming factor that I did not expect.
Yeah.
and I greatly appreciated the change of pace, right? If that makes sense. So
No,
like I
yeah,
can't play for a long time because my hand will go numb,
yeah.
but like it is a very like for your psyche, right? Like think about like, oh, I listen to nothing but rap music. Oh, maybe I should take in some classical today,
Hmm.
and doing things like that is kind of good for you, right? Like having those subtle changes in, in kind of the randomness is good because you can get into a monotonous way of doing things in COVID times for sure,
Yes.
especially as someone as disabled or injured or experiencing chronic pain, right? Like it's all about routine when it comes to medications and the things you have to do throughout the day to keep going,
Yeah.
that can get very monotonous, and monotony is like the worst thing. I feel
Can I
like.
be a tiny bit like absurd
Mm.
here? Like, there's so much that I have to do simply to keep myself running, right? But the one that gets on my nerves the most is I have to drink 4 liters of water a day. And if I have not had a liter by 10 a.m., then the entire day
Oh
is
yeah, you're behind schedule.
nearly ruined,
Wow.
right? And I think that's the one that I resent the most because it just seems so silly. Um, and like it should not be a problem. And yet here we are.
Here we
It,
are. Yeah.
yeah, I'm
And
behind
people,
today.
yeah, and people ask me, right? Like you're constantly drinking something, right? Like I was interviewing someone very high up in the Red Hat org chart, and I was just constantly drinking coffee. And someone asked me, it's like, do you need to drink so much? It's like, actually, yes, I do, because I take a lot of medication that dries out my mouth, and that's bad for my teeth. So yes, I do need to kind of drink constantly. Much kind of the same way you have to drink 4 liters of water. I just have to have a drink around
Right.
somewhere, right? Like yeah, at all times.
Mm-hmm.
um, because if I don't, like, I won't be able to talk. My mouth will get so dry. It's like a desert. It's like
Right.
awful. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, how has like is your office? How far away is your office from like your partner's office or partner's workspace? Is it the same space, separate spaces, right behind you? Is that what I'm looking at? Okay, that's what I figured. How has that gone? Because I don't have that problem, right? Like, my,
It's,
wi- we're a single income family, so
I mean, it's gone okay. Mostly because he doesn't mind using his laptop from the couch.
nice.
Um, and also, right now we're a single income family, so
Mhm.
his obligations are a little bit different than mine at the moment. So
Right.
um, once that changes, that's going to be interesting, especially if we are still working from home for the most part.
Which sounds
So
like we will be for
a
at least till
while
summer. It sounds like, at the very least.
at
Yeah.
the very least.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Maybe it will finally be the push we need to finish unpacking and making our different areas habitable.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. So for me, right, like moving the office onto the same level where I sleep
Hmm.
has been like kind of nice, to be honest with you, right? Because like I can, oh, like my pills are right here in my office. I don't have to walk down 2 flights of stairs and then walk up 2 more flights of stairs because I left my med kit in at my desk, right? Like it's made things more reachable and attainable and like, oh yeah, it's just right here. I can go grab it and get what I need out of my office and done.
Hmm.
But then, sometime in the next year, I'll be going back downstairs to a finished office, which is great, and those stairs will still be there.
Yeah.
And I'll still close my rings by going up and downstairs, not necessarily by walking around the neighborhood, right? Like,
Hmm.
um, that I think is interesting in a couple different ways because I'm right next to my son, so when he wakes up in the morning, I'm always up before everybody else. Bad habit, if you want to call it that. But like, I'll be in here, checking email, writing my daily email out to the company or whatever about what's on the live stream, or whatever it is. And if he wakes up, he just pops in here now, which I think is totally cool, because he'll just pop over here and or sit in my lap, and I'll show him stuff. And like, it's become this really cool thing, because all this technology is right here next to his bedroom. It's not downstairs, hidden away kind of thing. It's like more accessible to him to an extent, right? Like, he can see what daddy's doing. He can see daddy working, kind of deal. And like, he kind of gets it a little bit better now. And it's opened his eyes to, hey, if you're loud, this thing hears it. And so will the rest of the world. Do you want to be heard by the rest of the world? No? Okay. Don't yell outside the door,
Wait until he says, yes, I want to be heard by the rest of the world.
Right. Yeah. Then okay, have the mics on. Here you go.
So
if it's that important, yeah, have at it.
I know we should probably wrap up, because we're trying to keep this a little bit shorter than our last one. But I was wondering if we could end on talking about what we hope to carry forward in some of these habits that we've built up during COVID, and what do we hope sticks around afterwards?
Well, I definitely hope that there's, as easy access to medicine, right? Like, those virtual appointments are amazing. And I know it has to help doctors too, right? Like, I really, really hope we don't go back to going to the doctor's office all the time, right? Like, that's definitely one thing I hope sticks around. And, as much as people hate them, I hope there is still some kind of virtual component to all the events that occur, just less events. We don't need an event for everything, folks. But yeah, like, I definitely appreciate the virtual accessibility of it all, right? Because you don't get 40, 50,000 people at KubeCon unless it's virtual.
Right.
I think that's pretty cool.
I hope that a lot of people who have found that working from home helps them manage their pain, their disability, that they're empowered to continue those practices. Because I feel like, just kind of anecdotally, what I've heard is that it's made a huge difference in people's lives.
Absolutely.
And of course, that varies wildly depending on the person. But people find they can control their diets a bit more, if they have special dietary considerations, manage their water intake, etc. So I'm hoping that we get a little bit more flexibility in terms of how we actually go about our day to day, because we are humans,
right?
First and foremost, right? So,
and I think I used to travel a lot, and this will be my last statement. I used to travel a lot, and traveling meant, A, you didn't take as good care of yourself, and B, you didn't eat as well as you could. I've lost so much weight during COVID. People are talking about like their COVID 15 or whatever. I'm like, my COVID negative 20. What? I mean, like, I don't, and it's just, it's just because I'm not traveling.
Yeah.
And I have time to like sit down, okay, I'm only going to eat this, this is a portion size, right? Like, I don't need more than that kind of thing. And I can actually do that on my own, not hope someone else does it for me.
Right. Definitely. I will not say that I have experienced the significant weight loss over COVID, but part of that is just that my activity has declined so much over the past 6 months due to the loveliness that is my body. So yeah. But I hope we go into 2021 with a bit more under our belt.
There's more optimism, I feel like, about 2021 than this year.
I'm trying desperately not to jinx anything. Just
Yeah,
Yeah.
as am I. I mean, there's, the general sentiment is that 2021 will be hopefully better than 2020.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think a lot of people have been impacted by this virus and the quarantining and,
Mhm.
the bubbles they've created. And
Yeah.
we'll see what that does to society as we come out of it and what
Mhm.
things change as a result. But, we're going to be a generation of people who are like, I remember when we used to do things this way and
Mhm.
X happened and we didn't do it like that anymore, right? Like, think of your grandparents after the Depression or World War II or whatever, right? Like, how, going through that experience changed their lives. We're going to be in the same kind of situation. There's going to be things we don't do anymore because of COVID, right?
Mhm.
Or we do wear masks all the time, just in general, right?
Yeah.
Like when we're out in public,
Mhm.
um, just to keep ourselves safe and others around us safe, right? Like it's just a nice thing to do. It's the polite thing to do. Wear a
Considerate,
mask. Yeah,
responsible, all that good stuff.
right.
Well, I think that is it for today. Thanks for joining us at Work in Pain. Got it right this time.
Yay.
And we'll see you all next time.
Yeah. Have a great new year, everybody.
Yes. Thanks, y'all.